There were so many students, and you practically had to fight your way through the halls, and you were always constantly watching for that good-looking guy coming down the stairs when in between classes.
It wasn't just my class or the class before me or the class after. In fact, we weren't very class identified. We were Jefferson identified.
You could not walk through the halls of Jefferson and not feel the history and how much it meant to this valley. And part of that you took away with you when you left.
The neatest part was that the city really was only a partner. There was so much more private money that went into it, and it was probably, after Center in the Square, the best example of public-private partnering that we've had in Roanoke.
This building has evoked strong emotions in Roanoke residents for nearly 80 years. It was a high school for 50 years. After years of renovations, it has become the Jefferson Center, a cultural destination for the Roanoke Valley and beyond. Hello, I'm Denise Allen Membraño. Thank you for joining Cox Communications. For the next half hour, we will be looking back at Jefferson High School. Alumni of Jefferson say this was a magical place to attend high school. Talk with a member of the class of 1932, 1952, or 1972, and the response will be the same. Their experiences here created a devotion to this building. Charlie Boswell takes us for a walk down memory lane.
School spirit was never in short supply at Jefferson High School. Even now, more than 30 years after the last class graduated, that spirit is still strong. Jefferson opened its doors in 1924. At the time, Roanoke was known as the Magic City because it was growing so rapidly. Some of that magic appears to have settled in these walls.
We had a great football team and a great basketball team, and we used to beat Granby and Norfolk and Marshall and Richmond, and everybody got such a big kick out of that because we were the hillbillies from out here in the mountains, and they were the sophisticated teams that weren't ever supposed to be beaten. But it was more than that. I really think while the athletics were part of it, we had such great teachers.
This place allowed us to see possibilities that I'm not so sure we may have seen had we not been here and had not had teachers who were willing to open doors and push us through, sometimes screaming and crying, but pushed us through nonetheless so that we could see possibilities in our lives.
As Roanoke entered the 20th century, young people were not expected to go to high school. Grammar schools were common, though. There were no laws mandating education or federal funding to ease the financial burden on the localities. In the 1890s, Roanoke became one of the first cities in the state to offer high school classes. The first high school classes were taught in a grammar school. Then, in 1893, Roanoke leased space in the Bridgewater Carriage Factory. 7 girls earned diplomas in 1894. In 1898, Roanoke purchased a lot for the city's first high school. Roanoke High School opened in February 1899.
It was a very modern facility of its time. It was a nice kind of Romanesque revival structure, red brick. Probably built to modern codes and would have been around for another 10 or 20 years as the local high school at least, had the community not grown so rapidly.
91 students earned diplomas from Roanoke High School in 1920. Just 3 years later, Roanoke purchased a home and another lot at Church and 6th Street for $147,000. In October of 1923, Roanoke High School students helped lay the cornerstone of what would become Jefferson High School. In the stone, they placed class rolls, coins, pictures, and a city map. They also put in 3 acorns, urging future generations to plant them in order to connect the past, present, and future. Jefferson High School opened its doors to 1,000 students on September 15, 1924. The Tudor Revival-style building was located on streetcar lines and cost $550,000 to construct.
That it was the city high school. Now, we were in the days of segregation, so it really wasn't the city high school. We had a separate black high school, but among the white population for its time, it was the city high school. There was a period of time, I'll point out, and I'm sure you're well aware, that Jefferson actually accepted a number of students from the county.
At its height, the Jefferson High School population reached 1,500 students. That number declined when Patrick Henry High School opened in the early 1960s. The Magicians' school spirit never waned.
I came the first year they opened the other high school, and so it was a smaller school when I was here, but I grew up 3 blocks from here, and all my brothers came here. So the first day that I came down 6th Street and came around to the front and looked up at this beautiful place and thought, oh my heavens, I get to finally go to high school here. It meant a whole lot to me, and I love this place.
Well, the guys used to sit in the back, and because of the fairly precipitous pitch of the floor, would put a steel marble down on the floor and just let it roll. And with the metal supports on the chairs, it sounded like a pachinko game when it was making its way down the auditorium. But by the time it got to the stage front, it was going at pretty high speed, and it would go wham against that, and the teacher would then know what was going on and try to find out who did it. Hardly ever find out who did it. But it happened several times a day, I'm sure.
The beginning of the day started out with homeroom, which was normally in the auditorium, which is now Chapman Performance Hall, which was absolutely gorgeous. And it was great fun because you never knew who was going to roll a marble down the auditorium. And one guy in our class got real daring, and he rolled a bowling ball down.
We were sitting downstairs and having a small tour of about 30 of the alumni that were in that class. And I asked the group if they had anything that they wanted to tell me about their experiences here. And one man raised his hand and he just said to me, he said, yeah, I've got a story I want to tell you. It was about when we were here in school, we went to a small duck pin bowling ball alley that was located downtown, and they took one of the bowling balls and brought it back to school with the idea of using it as a noise maker during their study hall. What happened during this period, they took the bowling ball, took it out of the bag and rolled it, and it did not hit one single leg, full speed down to the front of the hall. At that point, he told me that they had a substitute teacher who was teaching that day, and the bowling ball hit her in the ankle and broke her ankle. And I looked at 4 of the gentlemen that were sitting there, and they all lowered their heads at the same time. And I said, well, one of you did it. And he told me, even though it was 45 years later, said, we'll never tell.
Jefferson was an inner city school. That meant it was landlocked, but that also meant it was close to the heart of downtown Roanoke. Students made the best of both of those situations.
If you had to go to any type of practice for anything, the guys walked to Highland Park, which is about 6 blocks up 6th Street, and we had to walk across Wasena Bridge to Wasena Park for like girls softball practice. That's where we practiced softball. And we had varsity teams that played, and one year we were city county champions in girls basketball, but I was on the squad. But I don't know, we thought we had the best. It never occurred to us that we didn't have a track out back, or didn't have big locker rooms and all that. As far as we were concerned, we had the best school in the world.
The thing I remember most fondly about Jefferson High School in my experience were all the pretty girls. I just loved the pretty girls that we had in this school. And I had a little 1927 Chevrolet that had a running board. And so at the end of the day, and I would bring it to school, and at the end of the day, I would get girls in the back seat and girls on the running board and drive 3 blocks down the street to Pugh's department store, which was later the Grand Furniture Store and is now going to be an apartment building, because there was a soda fountain in the back. And we'd all go down there and get cherry Cokes. It was downhill, and I'd have girls all over my running board. And some of the big football players, I was about 110 pounds soaking wet, and big football players would see me going down Campbell Avenue with all these girls hanging on my car. They were just after a ride. It wasn't me, but it was fun for me, and I used to get a big kick out of that.
My senior year, I found out the band was going to the Gator Bowl. So I decided it would be great to be a magician that year and get to go to the Gator Bowl, and it was awesome. We got to stay in Al Capone's house and practice on Daytona Beach, but then we had to walk 5 miles in the Gator Bowl parade.
I used to play basketball with a fellow player by the name of Lewis McClellan. He was a guard and I was a center. And I remember he was breaking down the center line, and I was over to the side, and I threw him a nifty pass, and he scored. And I picture that in my mind a lot of times, that that was one of these successful plays that I was involved in.
All the wonderful memories and success stories of its graduates could not keep Jefferson High School open. The last class graduated in 1974. It would take nearly 20 years and millions of dollars before Jefferson High School would find a new life as a cultural community center. That part of the story when we return.
Sometimes just an extra little kick. Power boost, an extra burst of speed, is what separates winners from those other guys. Power boost. Not for human consumption. Power boost. It's not for you. It's for your internet. The power and speed to get more of what you're into. That's Cox High-Speed Internet.
For more than a decade, Jefferson High School sat empty. It was nearly demolished. In 1985, Roanoke City Council formed a citizens committee to explore the options for this grand building. Here's Charlie Boswell.
Structurally sound and grand on the outside, inside Jefferson High School was a mere shadow of its former self. It had been stripped of its fixtures, used as a trash dump, and become home to pigeons. Plans to turn the building into a higher education center failed. Another idea to transform Jefferson into an assisted living center also fell by the wayside. When talk of demolishing the school started, Jefferson High School graduates united under the guidance of the late Judge Beverly Fitzpatrick.
The city was very close, through the Redevelopment Housing Authority, of tearing it down and making a parking lot for Calvary Baptist. And there was even a proposal to do that, and that's when the judge kind of stepped in and said, no, we don't want to do that, and garnered those folks who were interested together enough to create the foundation and begin to look at what Jefferson could really be for the community.
The judge also chaired the Citizens Committee charged with finding a workable option that would keep the former Jefferson High School building standing. Shortly before the Jefferson Center Foundation was created, the committee found a niche the building could fill.
After 3 years of study and concern, it just kind of fell into place. The idea of renting the classroom space, converting the classroom space into office space, and bringing in nonprofit organizations to share the space for slightly less than market rates for Class A space.
Jefferson now had a chance at a new life, but it would take money, and a lot of it, to make the plan a reality. Phase 1 called for the renovation of the classroom space into offices, the addition of air conditioning, stabilizing the rest of the building, and adding what would become the Fralin Atrium in honor of Jefferson alumnus Horace Fralin. Phase 1 would require $5 million. A public-private partnership with the city was created, and through a bond referendum, the city committed $3 million to the project. The Jefferson Center Foundation set out to raise the other $2 million. To do that, Judge Beverly Fitzpatrick had to lobby in Richmond.
He had to get a law changed in Richmond that allowed him, as a former judge, to go raise money, because it was not legal for him to do that. And he went to members of the General Assembly and said it shouldn't make any difference if you're a retired judge. You should be able to be involved in your community, and they changed it.
Construction on Phase 1 began in 1992. A year later, the Jefferson Center opened. It housed 21 nonprofit tenants, and the Fralem Atrium was available as rental space for social, business, and civic events. Phase 2 began a year later. Renovations to the old automobile shops created Fitzpatrick Hall. A gift of $30,000 from Rosalie and Sidney Schaffman equipped the full commercial kitchen. The city said it did not have another $600,000 to complete Phase 2, but serendipity would come into play.
Alvin Hudson was a graduate of Jefferson, and he was then the sheriff of the city of Roanoke. And when he heard about it, he went to the city manager, who I think was Bob Herbert at the time, and said, I have the money, and I'll release it for that purpose. And it turns out that the sheriff had been utilizing unused prison cell space for the use by other counties and other cities within a reasonable proximity of Roanoke. They pay the city for housing those prisoners, and it had accumulated to almost $1 million. And Alvin said, I'll release $600,000 for that, to create that Fitzpatrick Hall.
Fitzpatrick Hall opened in 1995. Still, what would become the crown jewel of the Jefferson Center had yet to be polished. In 1997, the Jefferson Center Foundation started a capital campaign to raise money for the renovation of the school auditorium.
And this auditorium was built larger and outfitted more elaborately than it would be otherwise, because the council at that time decided this could be the city's auditorium for community affairs.
Becoming a performance hall seemed like a natural progression for the auditorium. First estimates called for $5 million of renovations. Through another bond referendum, the city pledged $2 million. As the project moved forward, the cost increased to $9 million. Still, Judge Fitzpatrick never doubted it would become a reality.
Broadus and Eric and I told him we would bring him down here because he wanted to come to Jefferson, and we had no idea that he would die 2 weeks later. But he was in a wheelchair, and we brought him up and literally had to pick him up and take him up to this landing at the very top of the balcony. And this place was in shambles. The roof was partially off, and the sun was shining down through it. And the judge proceeded to tell us how Schaffman Hall was going to look and feel, and how the chairs would be this way, and you'd have those little boxes downstairs. And it was almost hard. I mean, you loved him, and he'd never let you down, so you knew he was telling the truth, but you're going, how in the world is this going to happen? And of course, our greatest concern was that the judge never saw Schaffman Hall dedicated and finished. And yet I told Mom, I said, yeah, I think he does. I think he looks down on it. And he has to have a huge smile on his face, because he sees all these people coming here who love this place and who not only understand its past, but participate, in its present and in its future.
The existing marble, wood panel, and cast plaster finishes were completely refurbished. The 950 new auditorium chairs are cherry wood with plush velvet cushions. Supporters can buy a seat with a commemorative plaque for $1,000. More than 780 have been sold. Loges and chandeliers were added to complete the look.
We wanted it to look like a European opera house or something akin to that. We'd been told by a consultant that the symphony hired about 10 years before we started our study. Acoustical engineers from New York had come in and said, this is a real jewel because it's shaped like a cigar box, which is the best shape for acoustical reverberations.
When the curtain rose on May 12, 2001, it was a $50,000 deep red velvet drape bought by Grand Home Furnishings. At that time, Schaffman was one of 2 halls in the world and the only hall in the United States to have the Lexicon sound system. The other updates included an orchestra lift, expanded stage area, and a trap door in the middle of the stage. The Schaffman Performance Hall, named in honor of Rosalie and Sidney Schaffman, completed the foundation goal of creating a cultural community center.
Not only has it become a center for so many programs that people from all walks of life can come participate in and view. But it's also an anchor for what we are now calling the western end of downtown.
We thought we could revitalize this neighborhood and stabilize more than just this building, but this whole western end of downtown. And I think that has actually taken place. There are businesses that are here now that wouldn't be here in this area except for this. And I've read recently that Access Advertising is buying a building just down the street. They never would have done that without this auditorium and this center of activity.
The Jefferson High School cheerleaders are getting ready for another all-class reunion. The annual get-together is a fundraiser for the center and helps keep the school spirit strong.
It's like you can't remember what you had for breakfast this morning, but you can remember a song that you sang in the 60s. It's the right side of the brain or something, because they just came back to us last year when we started practicing. We had no trouble at all coming back. But, you know, I couldn't tell you what I did yesterday, but I can tell you a cheer I did 40-odd years ago.
Also, the biggest thing to me is the thrill of meeting people who graduated, my gosh, the year I was born. And they come back, and to hear their memories, and just to meet them and know that they felt the same way that we do, and then to meet the kids that came along after us and to see their feelings that are the same, even after they split the schools. So there is a very unique mystique about this building.
This unique building is still in the need of some repairs. The old front entrance has been closed because of deteriorating steps. There are leaks in the roof that need mending. Reg Hutcherson, class of '48 and alumni and Jefferson Center board member, would like to see more alumni get involved. The fourth floor of the building, former home of the JHS Band and Choir, has yet to be renovated. Hutcherson sang in the choir and would like to see the fourth floor transformed. Additional alumni support and more help from the city would be needed to make that a reality.
Personally, I'd like to see the fourth floor completed. I can see that as a Jefferson Club, a place where people can come to eat and for the performances that take place.
So you like going to the theater? Well, did you know Cox can bring the theater to you? With HD Movies on Demand, you can access a library of crystal clear high-def movies. Just go to channel 998, click Movies on Demand, then HD Movies. Then choose from action, comedy, romance, and children's titles. So get your popcorn and get more out of the movies you love with HD Movies on Demand from Cox Digital Cable.
The old Jefferson High School building does not look much like a school anymore. Renovations tallying nearly $15 million have transformed it into the Jefferson Center. Jefferson Center staff and those involved in the transformation take us for a tour.
Well, here we are, Denise, in the memorabilia room. This is, of course, where we keep all of the things from Jefferson High School alumni. Among many of the things that we have here are trophies, and we have different school uniforms that were worn from the band and such. Now, all of these materials that are in this room were actually donated by alumni who went to Jefferson High School when they found out that we were renovating the building. One of our more famous trophies, of course, is the State Basketball Championship Trophy. This is from 1969-70. These are some of our more influential alumni within and without Roanoke. We, of course, have Warner Dahlhaus and Bev Fitzpatrick. Warner Dahlhaus was the founding director of Dominion Banks. Bev Fitzpatrick, of course, was the chief judge here in Roanoke. Of course, there's also Carter Burgess. He was president of TWA, among other things. We have alumni who played football for Virginia Tech and the Baltimore Colts, and of course, who also a founder of the National D-Day Memorial up in Bedford. This is one of our more useful tools that we have here in the memorabilia room. These are all of the old annuals from the high school. We have a lot of people who come in here, get to flip back through their old high school records and see what they did, and it brings back a lot of memories. We also have a lot of files here. We've kept records over the years of everything from playbills from old school plays to certificates of graduation right here, and people will come in and do research through some of our files. And of course, we've also kept over the years a lot of pictures that were taken here at Jefferson High School, old football heroes, and of course all of the graduating classes here. We have photos of all of those as well.
Wow.
All of these materials are used, especially during our alumni weekends. This room is particularly resourceful for our alumni.
This is a great room, but where do we go next?
Let's go to the atrium. This is Fralin Atrium. This is by far one of the most dramatic areas in Jefferson Center. You can see the high ceilings and the big open space makes it very accommodating to a lot of guests. Of course, this is where everybody comes before and after concerts, and we also hold a lot of events here. Like some of our other rooms here at Jefferson Center, this was named for one of our alumnus.
What type of events do you have here?
Well, we actually have had weddings here and wedding receptions. We have community events and corporate events here in the atrium. But I'd like to show you where we have a lot more events. Let me take you over to Fitzpatrick Hall. Now this is Jefferson Center's Fitzpatrick Hall. It's home to about 230 events a year and can accommodate up to about 400 people. We also have a lot of wedding receptions. We invite people in to do corporate events. So Fitzpatrick Hall is really a community room for all of the Roanoke Valley.
This is a beautiful room. Do you know who designed it?
Actually, yes, the architect was Richard Reif, and he took on sort of a Jeffersonian look with the columns and the archways. And a lot of the wood in here is actually used to mimic the wood that's in Schaffman Performance Hall, where we're going to go next. Now we're coming up now to Schaffman Performance Hall. This hallway actually looks most like it did back when this was a high school. The floors and the ceilings were all kept fairly authentic to what they originally looked like. And of course, all of the classrooms now are actually home to 19 different nonprofits at Jefferson Center. Everything from the Clean Valley Council to the Jefferson Center Foundation, the JCs, the Junior League, Roanoke Symphony, they all call Jefferson Center home.
The staff, we're family. We basically look at each other every day, more than probably look at our spouses and our other family members. And when you're around people that much and you're all for one goal, I think that's what really sets us apart, is that we do things together constantly. And that means that they're family. So we're just a big or small family here that all work together.
I'm Denise Allen Membranio. Thank you for joining Cox Communications and looking back at Jefferson High School and the creation of the Jefferson Center. While the magicians are gone, the magic remains.
Go back, 'cause you ain't got the goods, and you ain't got the rhythm, and you ain't got the jazz, and you ain't got the team that Jefferson has.
Now, they call themselves the Magicians. It is a magic place, because there's not another high school that I know of anywhere near here that holds the same kind of dignity and respect from its former graduates. And
we feel like we have a special chance as a legacy, the graduates of Jefferson, to keep this building going and the nonprofits that it helps support to give back to the community. Very few schools are going to have that opportunity, and we do if we can keep this building going.
The great thing is that you have a way to support us that is very important, and one of the ways to support Jefferson Center is to attend shows.
But turning this place into a functioning, vibrant community center that people now enjoy so clearly and so enthusiastically is quite a rush for those of us who worked on keeping it from being torn down. What a tragedy it would have been had it been turned into a parking lot.